the main page here. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining today. Hopefully you can all see the session all right and everything's good to go. So what I'm going to do is I am the author behind the QER Power BI template. So this is kind of a big deal here for this new QER that we've released here. It's the QER has been a few years in the making. I started it back in 2000. Right during kind of around the pandemic, and it's been going strong ever since then. So this is my official first time actually publicly talking about it. So I'm really kind of excited. I'm very excited about some of the new features that we've brought in version 5, and then some of the things, if there's time later, I'll talk about some of my ideas going for the next 5.1. As we go forward. So, but just want to give a big shout out and thanks to everybody that uses the QER. It is truly a community-driven tool set. I take feedback from support engineers, customers, product group, everything gets added into the QER. That's kind of why it's gotten so big, but I have an operations background from back in the day, so I kind of follow that Scrooge McDuck philosophy, work smarter, not harder. Right, and so that's my kind of whole mindset behind the QER, is to try to make life a little bit easier. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to spend a little briefly talking about the new classifiers, right? These things are amazing. They've been in development for, I think, roughly around 3 years, right? So they didn't just come out the door and add them in there. They've been baking in CQD for quite some time. Then we'll talk about the QER5, and like I said, if I have some time, we'll talk briefly about what's next. So, all right, so let's dig into the classifiers, right? Okay, so in the new classifiers, we now have 40 new, basically, families of classifiers. It seems like a lot, but they're all grouped together into basically a main indicator, which is kind of like the media modality classifier, and this is about as close as we've gotten to having a universal poor call value in CQD. So the media modality kind of basically, it's going to give you a true or false statement based upon a seemingly endless array of decisions, right? Because these new classifiers, they're not hard rules anymore. It's not like jitter is greater than 30, packet loss is greater than 500, poor call. Doesn't work that way anymore, right? These guys are looking at anywhere between 20 to 50 different data points for each individual call. They also take into account feedback. If you answer that feedback at the end of the call, the classifiers are listening to that as well too. So if you give it a 4, 3, or 2, it's going to add a little more logic to the call. Additionally, the classifiers also compare your metrics against every other tenant within your region. So we've got NOAM, EMEA, and APAC, right? So each set lives in there, and so basically they're comparing you against that. ML stands for machine learning. It's not AI, it's machine learning, right? These guys sit in the background and they just try to make decisions, and really what they are is they are experience-based classifiers, right? Their job is to try to find, they're going to flip to true if they feel that whatever happened, the user noticed, right? Because what we want to try to get away from is chasing metrics. Like, hey, we got packet loss, there's a problem, but the user didn't report a problem. But the tool says there is a problem, right? And so that's what we're trying to close that gap to start to deal with more experience base, right? So now we can start to look at things like network. We can look at inbound and outbound network. Thank you, Donald, for throwing that up. That's wonderful. I was going to talk about that. We've got inbound and outbound network. We've got compute devices now, so we can tell you if the machine is causing an issue. We can also tell you if devices. We can do inbound and outbound devices, so like microphone or speaker. We do have some other ones coming right now that are turned off, but those are based upon echo as well too, and stuff like that. And then we have this one down here at the bottom, this guy called is dominant participant. This is a special one that kicks in under various rules. I believe it's 60 seconds of actual audio, right? So you have to be speaking, or you have to turn on a screen share. And it flips a special token, and you get more classifiers that are now applied to you. And we'll talk about that here in a sec. It's pretty cool stuff, right? But I'm really, really excited about being able to bring compute and device information to you guys, because before it was all just network based. And if anybody that works in this technology knows that it's not always a network, and the tool itself, Teams itself has a lot of logic and built into it to mitigate the effects of packet loss, jitter, and latency and device issues and stuff. And so what we're trying to do now here is help you kind of sort between the big issues, right? Is this, am I going to focus on a network problem or a laptop workstation problem, or is I need to change somebody's device, right? If somebody got a bad device, right? Okay, so here we go with the classifiers themselves, a little bit more about the classifiers. So we can see we've got over here, we've got these kind of we call local models or inbound models. We can look at inbound network, local compute, local device, and then of course this media modality one over here too is in here as well too. So they're going to be kind of looking at, now of course we do look at packet loss, we do look at latency, we do look at jitter, but what's really nice about these classifiers is we look at average and burst values, max values. The original classifiers did not do that. So I have gotten a few questions a lot about what happened to the freeze classifier. It's still there, it's just evolved, right? It's still inside the classifier now because the freeze classifier really just focused on burst inbound packet loss on the video stream. That's it. That's all it was, right? It was just kind of a way to just for us to go out there and find out heavy cases of burst packet loss that were affecting video. But the new classifiers have that logic built into them, right? So keep that in mind. We also can look at outbound data, right? We can look at outbound network, speakers, and stuff like that, you know, devices, then outbound computes. And then this guy over here, this is where I was talking about that is dominant, right? This is the speaker, right? So what'll happen is that if the speaker has a bad network device or an affected workstation that is impacting their quality of their, you know, their output, and it's affecting you, we will mark that, hey, you had a bad call and it was because of John Doe speaker. He was the one that was having a problem, right? And so it really kind of helps you isolate in a particular call what's going on. All right, so very, very cool about that. We do have a nice document here, an article that's been published that's out there. It's in the QER. If you've downloaded the new QER, it sits right in front of your face. I highly recommend that everybody read through this. Okay, it's going to help you understand what these new classifiers are, because like I previously mentioned, we don't want to go chasing metrics anymore. We want to try to get away from that practice, right? Especially when we're just looking at individual calls, right? I always like to tell customers, did the user complain of the call? Was there any user complaints in the call? If the answer is no, then there is no problem with that call, right? That doesn't mean that you don't want to go kind of looking into it to think, well, maybe I've got some Wi-Fi issues or some network issues or an ISP issue, and I want to extrapolate that more. But for the purposes of your help desk ticket, whatever you're doing, you just close that sucker out because there is no problem, right? So don't try to create problems just because of metrics, right? For you old guys that have been using the QER or CQD, you know, and you're used to the old classifiers, it is, I myself had a little bit of problem getting out of this, right? And trying to kind of trust the new classifiers to let me know if something's going on. So I'm always listening to my customers, right? Always listen to what they say, right? What's the problem? Who did the problem occur? Does it keep happening again, right? And so very good stuff in here, but definitely worth a read on that. So, all right. So that's all I'm going to talk about the machine learning classifiers for now, okay? There's going to be more coming on those, right? We're going to have some more sessions and more stuff, but for now, that's. I just want to kind of touch on that. So let's kind of dig into the QER. It's a good question there, Christopher. Christopher asked, what about the reverse? When users are complaining about a call quality and the QER does not indicate a problem? Well, I got your answer for you, so just hold on a second here, okay? Because this is where I need your help, okay? So what's new here? We've got a new look. Right, so this is kind of simple and easy, but yes, I kind of rebranded the QER to fit the Teams theme, right? So it's all got Teams colors and Teams fonts, and so it kind of makes the marketing guys really happy, and they like the colors and the way it looks, right? What we'll notice here is this guy here, this TAC bar has been replaced with the media modality classifier. So that one I was telling you about before. And then you can see these guys have been replaced in here. A couple of them have 2 lines now instead of just 1. That's because they're network based and you have an inbound and an outbound. So you can kind of see in and out, right, which is sweet, right? If you don't like the colors or if you are colorblind, there is a document downloaded with the QER that will teach you how to change all of the colors in the QER in one set, right? So you can, if you have a problem with red, greens, and yellows, right, it just doesn't work for you, change them, right? Give yourself whatever color palette works for you, right? So just follow in the document there. There is a nice guide in there on how to do that, right? So, all right, the QER is also going to be a little bit easier to download. If anybody now gets into the web browser, you're going to see a direct link to it, right? So it's going to be right there in your face. It's just going to take you right out of here to the downloads, and we're going to go for there. All right, okay, so that was an easy one. All right, so to answer Christopher's question about, he asked a question of what about users that are complaining about a call, but the QER doesn't say there's a problem. Well, that's where every single report now has feedback, right? So that's what's really nice about this is, so what happens is if you notice something and you want to submit a question directly to me, right, without going through support, without going through, you know, any of the channels that you normally do, just click this little button right here. It will know what version of the QER you're using and what report that you're giving from, and it'll give you the opportunity to just, there's like an open field text box, a couple, you know, like I think we've got 2 questions, right? And you can put a star rating in there, like up there you go. You can put a star rating in here, and then you can just answer a few additional questions if you want. The only thing that's required is the star rating, right? But this is a really good opportunity, Chris, if you catch something like that, because I am constantly tweaking it, right? I am working hard to try to get it so that when the QER and the user experience align with each other, right? And so that's my long-term goal, is to try to get as close to that as possible, right? So that they can align, so that if the user says it, you can see it, right? Sometimes it's just not very obvious, but that's where I need your guys' feedback, because I can color code things, you know, so if something flips up, I'm going to color code it yellow or red, or give it some color so that your eyes are drawn to it, right? Because not everything is color coded in the QER like it is in the Teams Admin Center, right? So we have to, excuse myself, my cat here. Okay, so this is nothing. Okay, so familiar look and feel, again, we kind of already went through this one here. Did I back up one, or did this just get, oh, okay. And this particular one, so what I'll draw everybody's attention to over here, since this is a little bit bigger, is over here on this side, some of these have been reworked a little bit. The colors have changed, right? So I've tried to keep things at a universal level. So if you're doing with building file information, it's a salmon colored. If you're dealing with CQD information, it's this kind of teal color. You've got, you know, anything that's in this purple box is going to be considered some type of filter or slicer that you can deal with and stuff like that. Again, you're going to have the same basic things over here as well as you go, but I try to keep everything the same, right? As we go through, but this is a better one. I like this one better. So this is the meeting health report, and this particular report is one of the more popular ones that I go through, right? I've been working long and hard. I spent a lot of time working with the product group on this, but what we've done now is we've actually brought the classifiers into the meeting health report, right? And so what you can actually do is when you're looking at the meeting, you can actually come in here and actually start going through these, and they'll turn yellow if any one of them goes from 0 to 1. And of course, you can see income. This is an incoming compute problem. So what this basically meant is that this person was having an issue rendering. I think this is kind of hard to see, but we've got audio, video, and screen sharing all here. These little media types over here, all having a problem, right? And so at a real quick glance, you can come in here and go, man, this guy's laptop's having an issue, right? Well, he's probably one of those guys that might have 150 tabs open in his browser, and he might have 3 or 4 browsers open, Outlook, Excel, Word, you know, a couple different 100 apps going, and it kind of loads the machine up, right? And so that can often cause an issue, but you get to see it right here in your face, right? And so it's all going to be right here. Additionally, I've got the same classifiers down here as well too. So I've got like inbound issues. So if you want to look at ISP, so if you have a big meeting and there's a bunch of ISPs, you can just click on this and you can expand it, and you can look at all the ISPs, and it'll have inbound and outbound network quality. And then over here, we've got clients that'll have inbound and outbound compute information, right? So basically, you know, which clients are working a little bit better than the other clients. So very kind of cool stuff there. But it's all included in here. These have all been updated too right here. This says poor media rate, poor inbound rate, poor outbound rate. if you are curious what these are, like what is poor media rate, because I have a habit of, I'm a human being, right? And so I have been working and going through and trying to rename CQDs, obscure terms, into something that a human can actually understand and ingest. So things like outbound problem, inbound problem, speaker outbound problem versus other user outbound problem. So now it's speaker, right? So I actually have a spreadsheet along with the QER that shows you all the classifier names, what they are in the QER, what they apply to, what media types they apply to, what decisions that are being made, and then a couple notes and stuff as goes along with it there. But it's a spreadsheet that's also included with the QER. I highly recommend you check it out. It will help you kind of get through some of those, like, what the heck is this, right? I don't understand this, because it's changed. Even though it's all been the same, it's every single report in the QER has been changed, right? And the classifiers are sprinkled everywhere, right? So I put that spreadsheet together mostly for myself at the beginning, because even I myself was confused about these new classifiers because they were created by some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, right? These guys are stat magicians, and they are incredibly intelligent in what they've done here and what they've created. And so I really, really wanted to be able to bring that to you guys and translate these amazing classifiers into something that we can all use, right? Because I use this daily, right? I was a support engineer, so I help customer call, with their call quality, and so I'm in this thing every single day, right? I have probably used this with over 2,000 customers in the last 5-6 years, so it's gone through a lot, right? Okay, sir.
Matt, yeah. One question that came up, and I know Logan kind of addressed it a little bit, but with that, I mean, you're working with this thing all the time, and it's not fast. There's some performance things going on with it, right? And so there was a question in the chat that kind of asked about, is there anything being done to be able to help that? And Logan jumped in and said, I'm using Azure Virtual Desktop to be able to help out with that, and having that VM in the cloud helps with that. But is there any tips or anything around that may be helpful for our attendees to be able to do more with this?
That is a great question. We all know it's slow, right? It's just the same speed it is for me that it is for you, right? I'm actually a consumer of CQD just like the rest of you guys. So I've tried really hard to make Power BI efficient and because we are using direct query, right? So I've worked with the Power BI team, and we've set the number of consecutive queries to mimic the layout of the receiving services that they have. So it's submitting and receiving, so it doesn't overload the system, right? What can you do to help? Well, one of my favorite things to do is Power BI, and unfortunately I don't have it up and running or screenshot, but Power BI has, under the Optimize tab, I believe it has the function to pause the visual, right? So you can pause visuals, go to where you want, and then unpause them and let them refresh. Then you can pause them again, play with it, tweak it, do what you want, and then unpause it. Right, I do that all the time when I'm editing the QER because it shuts off the queries, right? Because with direct query, every single time we click something or move, it's like, oh, I have to do a new query. Oh, I have to do a new query. And yes, I too want to punch the screen sometimes at it. I'm like, just don't refresh everything, right? Just give me something small. So what are we doing to make it faster, right? There is a new version of the connector in development. It's been delayed a little bit because of some security reprioritization this year. But I can tell you it's not vaporware, it is funded. So I don't have a lot of details to share on what they're doing, because I think they're kind of still working out the fine minutia on how it's going to connect. But the goal is, here's the end goal, guys. They want to bring it as a native connector into Power BI so that you don't have that CQD file anymore, so that it's all part. And what that'll do is that'll unlock GCC so that you won't need to have some on-prem data connector, and you can just upload it. That's the goal, right? I wish I could tell you when it's going to be here. CQD is a massive monster inside of Microsoft. I wish it's one of the largest services we have. Think about it, it keeps telemetry on each and every single phone call that goes 24/7, 365 days a year around the world. So it's a vast repository of data. And a lot of times that's the problem. It's just so big, right? There's so much data. But they are working really hard to try to do this in large part, and in large part, I'd like to think it's a little bit of success due to the QER and Power BI, because when I first started working with this, it was very, very slow. I mean, much slower than it was now. And the product group was helping me to try to make it faster, but I was like, you know what? One of the things that I can do is just help make it more popular. The more popular it is, the more users it gets, the more awareness it gets, the more eyeballs it gets, the more funding it gets. Right? So I'm playing the long game here, guys. I'm working really hard to just try to get this, even if it breaks a little bit, that's okay, because sometimes when we break things, that's when we fix things, right? It's just kind of the way of the world, right? So, but I want this to speed up too, because it would save me so much time in my day as well too, right? So it's on my mind. It's on the product group's mind. It is something that they're working on. So hopefully next year we'll have something in beta that I can play with and see how it works and start to give feedback and maybe, let you guys know some cool stuff that's coming. But for now, we're very aware of it.
That's perfect. Okay.
So, I know we were talking about, this one was the meeting rhythm. Okay, search experience. So I've updated this as well too. And an unintended side effect happened here, right? I didn't plan on this. When I added the new classifiers here, I split them up, right? So we only have user classifiers up here. We have network classifiers down here, and I have a little bit of a mix down here, right? So you see I've got media rate, outbound and inbound drop setup. I've got inbound, outbound drop, setup, and feedback. And then I've got another poor media here, and then device, outgoing and incoming device, outgoing and incoming compute, and then network for these as well. What's really kind of cool about this is when you punch a call ID or a meeting ID in here, it spits out everybody's name and all the networks they've been on and gives you all the data, like visually, like in your face. So when you're analyzing like a single meeting and you punch it in there, you might see 15 to 100 people show up, and you're going to see all their telemetry from that meeting in colored format, which I think is pretty cool. But all the same features are here, right? You can still right click on things. We also have a couple extra ones up here where we do meeting types, because we're really trying hard to bring TLE in here on live events. But as all of you guys know, has anybody here actually triaged a 1,000 user meeting? Be careful what you ask for, right? Because I know a lot of you guys are asking for telemetry and TLE, and I'm just kind of sitting here going, no, you don't. You really don't, because you just want to call Microsoft. Because when I give you this report and all of a sudden that scroll just goes on and on and on and on, and you're just sitting there like, holy cow, what? For TLE-based events, please just focus on the inner meeting, right? The producers meeting, right? That's just a regular standard meeting. The reason why I say that is that the live event, the attendee side of it is a DVR, right? It's handled by a different service within Microsoft, right? So as long as the presenters have a nice, good connection and are not multitasking with a bunch of stuff on the bottom of their screen, they can basically go off and you will have a good recording, right? It's also really good too, I guess, when you are looking at TLE events and you are diagnosing them, is go back to the recording when the event occurred and look through the recording. If there's nothing in the recording, then you know the problem's on the user side, right? And so then you can just go and look at the users, right? But just be careful, right? It's tough when you're dealing with those big, gigantic meetings. So, but we are working on separating those here. And I think that's about it now here. So what's also really cool about this, guys, all of these are editable. Everything's unlocked in here. So if you want if you don't want to search on ASISP name, you can just click on this, go over to the visualizations on the right and change it, right? I didn't lock anything down. Some things do have the lock on them, but that's because I want you to engage your brain, because that is there for a specific reason, right? And so if anything in the QR is locked, you can still edit it, but it's edited at your own risk. Okay, guys. All right. So new user health report. I love this report. I love this report. Typically what happens when we go to look at a meeting, like when somebody says, hey, I just had a bad meeting, right? And that's all they give you. They don't give you any details. So the first thing you're gonna wanna ask them is, can you tell me more? Like, was it audio, video, screen sharing? Was it you a problem? Was other people having a problem seeing you? Stuff like that. These are all helping you decide, is this an inbound, an outbound problem? Is this a media problem? Is this a device, a compute problem? Right in your head before you even get to look at it. All right, so you get your information, you punch it in there, you go look at the meeting, you find the user, you can see that Victor's got a problem, but now the next question you got to ask yourself, is this a one-time only problem, or is Victor constantly having issues? Right, so that's where you go next. So you go into the meeting, check it out, find the user, right-click on him, go to the drill through, click user health reports, and it takes you here. As you can see, this has been completely redone. My favorite thing is right here. This is all the new classifiers that's going to give you either a weekly or daily view, right? And so it's going to basically kind of tell you what kind of problems this person has, right? You're going to see packet loss, latency, and jitter. You're going to see device information with classifier data in it. I know it's hard to see, but there is incoming and outgoing device data in here. Works great. I've been able to tell. I just had a call with an executive user that was constantly complaining of echo. And when I looked in here, he was using a Dell monitor as his speaker and microphone. And it was just generating so much echo, and the classifiers caught that, right? And we're like, yeah, look, every time he uses this Dell monitor, he's producing a horrible experience. So they went and bought him like a little speaker puck, because he doesn't want to use a headset. He wanted like one of those little speaker things. Problem solved. Easy peasy, right? Additionally, over here, you got compute usage, right? So if they're working on multiple devices, right? Maybe they've got a laptop, a workstation, something like that. You can tell which ones are performing better than others. Super awesome. Bunch of filters up here, you know, to help you kind of narrow down if he's complaining of audio, screen sharing, video. Is he complaining of an inbound or an outbound problem? Stuff like that. And then, of course, this is a media stream heat map. I don't think I have a blown up picture of it, but it's basically the same as the media health, but it's just looking at a single user across all their conferences. So you're looking at every single conference that this person has been in over the last 28 days. So the idea here, guys, is to be able to go and, does this person have a reoccurring problem, right? Because the quicker you can answer the question, like, hey, you know, Victor, yeah, I did see you had a problem in your meeting. It looks like you had a little bit of issues. I went and checked. You had a roaming event during the meeting where you just temporarily lost connectivity. Did you happen to be changing locations? Well, yeah, I was walking out of the building, and he changed networks. And when he changed networks, the people that were listening to him he went all crazy. So they marked the call as, I had a bad call. Well, that was expected, right? And it was just, we found it real quick, right? So really cool stuff here. This is, like I said, this is my favorite. I actually redesigned this when I got a case a few months ago where I had to triage like 20 executives in a row, like boom, 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 boom. So I had to do it real fast and give like a little presentation back to the customers. So I kind of reworked this a little bit. I'm still fine tuning it and tweaking it, but that's where, guys, if you see something in here you'd love to change, just click the feedback button, man. Right? Like I said, it comes right to me. It goes right to the CQD product group. They get a copy of it too, right? So don't abuse it, please. But you can give your feedback now directly to us. And like I said, it's in every single one, right? So, all right. Again, one of my favorite reports, right? I built this one for you network junkies out there, the guys that love to look at jitter, packet loss, and latency, and just they don't want to look at the classifiers. You want to make up your own decisions, right? And I respect that. I'm the same way. So I created this guy here to kind of show you ins and outs, but what's really new about this is that these are now color-coded based upon the classifiers, right? They will change this is inbound network, this is outbound network. So there's 4 colors. There's dark green, which is optimal. There's light green, which is they're within the recommended ranges. There's yellow, which means they're halfway over the recommended, and I'll clarify here in a second. And there's red, which means this is a problem. So basically the way that it would work is that they will change depending on what you're filtering on over here, right? So it's really nice. And remember, these are experience-based. So basically what it's telling you is that people on this network are not having the greatest experience. You can see lots of reds going on in here. Lots of reds, a few greens in here, kind of buried, tucked way down in here. On this classifier terms, Jeffrey asked a question here. I just caught this. How about the ability to custom define thresholds on these classifier for what determines good, bad? Well, Jeff, it's already you can already do it. It's already there. You just have to read the documents that come with the QER on how to do it. There's a table in there that you can edit yourself, and you can change those targets and the colors. And not only that, you can change the color thresholds on what you want to determine when it goes green, red, or yellow. It's there. It's not. I tried to make it easy because I just basically created a table, and I use one of Power BI's features, so I'm using the table. So all you have to go in there is just change the numbers on the table on when you want it to go, and it should flip automatically, right? If it doesn't work, just give me feedback. I'll see if I can do it. I really agonized over a long time of whether or not to do that because we spent a long time discussing on what we consider good, bad, poor, right? And we kind of fell onto that universal 3% range, right? Anything above 3% is kind of we consider poor, but what I've actually done is given it a little bit more. And so what I do is 0 to 3%. This is just general. 0 to 3% is good. 3 to 6% is yellow or poor, and then 6% and above is bad, right? If you keep yourself below 3%, you'll be okay. And what do I mean by 3%? I'm talking about these bad boys right here. Right? See these red lines and stuff? Right? Yeah, you can change all those. And you can even change the classifier ones too. Everything is open and unlocked, and there's secret hidden tables in there if you really want to just play around. So it's all there. It's available to you, right? You can change it. So like I said, I tried to make this as customizable as possible, right? Now, here's the problem with this, right? With you customizing it. The QER updates are not cumulative. They're just templates, right? So if I go and update it, I'm updating the base QER. I'm not updating your custom QER. Right. So what I'm going to try to do for you guys at the very end of the QER, there'll be a new page called release notes. And I'm going to start putting, I was keeping them in a separate document, but nobody reads it. So I just was like, okay. So I'm going to put it actually in the QER all the way on the end in like a release notes hidden report at the end. And it's just going to be just a history of what I've changed by version. So that way, if you are customizing it and a new one comes out, you can just go and look and see what changes I've made. And then you can either just make the changes yourself, or you can decide is upgrading it worth it. Okay. I try to do updates once a quarter. I don't like to do them a whole lot. I know working in ops myself, updates coming in are just, when they come in too much, it generates a lot of work for everybody, right? So I try to keep them consistent, but about 4 times a year, right? Unless a big bug's found, right? That something breaks, then I'll change it right away. Okay. VDI 2.0 is here, right? So we've got a new VDI 2.0 in here. It does also do it. There's also 1.0 is in here too. So this is 1 and 2. We left 1 in here because we wanted to be able to do comparisons for you guys, right? So that you can see the quality change from going from 1.0 to 2.0. Right, so that you can make sure you're getting your ROI out of this change, right? So a lot of these reports in here were actually designed specifically to take screenshots and give to your leadership so that you can show them that you're getting some usage out of it and that they're getting their ROI. Additionally, I did that because one of the things that I wanted you guys to work on, be able to showcase the VIPs, is that the sky's not falling, right? We all know that when a VIP has a problem, the whole company has a problem. Right, that's just the nature of the beast. I get it. I expect that. But by using the QER and some of like the media health and the media usage and some of these things right now, when you're looking at all up, you can show your leadership, hey, I understand that you have a problem, but you can see that 99.99% of everybody else is green. So the problem is, it's kind of limited down to their scope, right? Because we all know VIPs love to be on the beta rings. They like to have the new software. They want the new stuff. And if you're an old ops guy like me, you push back on that real hard, right? I do not like executives or VIPs being in any beta at all, right? None of the early rings, nothing, right? Okay, we got this. Oh, okay, we're officially at the end. I got a few minutes left, so I'm going to give you some bonus slides here, and I see there's a lot of questions coming in, so we're going to talk about those, but bonus slides here. Got a couple little things here to show you the difference between the old and the new, right? The biggest thing that you gotta get into your mind is these new classifiers are probabilistic, right? They're experience generated. They don't just look for packet loss greater than 500, right? They're looking for more stuff, right? We have 40 new models versus the old one had 1, 2, 3, 4. So we went from 4 to 40, right? The new old classifiers looked at one stream at a time. These new ones can actually look at multiple streams, right? The old ones were based upon averages values. These new ones can detect small changes, and they use max values and burst values and average values and median values and P95 values and all these, and they use concealed healer ratio and compressed sample ratio and echo and feedback rate my call. I know I said that, but you definitely want your users filling out the Rate My Call survey because it helps teach these classifiers. And so very good stuff there. And then I think the last one here, oh yeah, this is kind of just a small snapshot of what I had in the spreadsheet, right? So on the right, you'll see the actual name that comes from CQD itself. We call that CQD Custo, comes right from there. And then over here is what's actually being sent to you. So this is just a small tidbit. This is like a little excerpt of what's actually in the spreadsheet. Go to the spreadsheet for more goodness here. So, all right. So now we're at 20 minutes. Perfect. I guess time for some Q&A here.
And
okay.
We do have some questions.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was seeing. So the first one I want to have is the Jeff Jacob had this one specifically when he's been out there for a little while. In asking specifically about, hang on, let me get the question. Oh, here we go. When looking at classifiers, especially those that are device endpoints, so back to the classifier thing, in specifically looking at Apple products, right? Are you providing more expanded visibility into those products as they're interacting with Teams, right? So those endpoints and how it's going to be displayed in QER.
Yeah, so the classifiers do actually take into account all products, right? And CVI too,
yeah.
Right? Anything that submits telemetry into CQD gets examined, whether it's Apple or Android or Teams room or PSTN endpoints are a little iffy right now. We're working on that. We got a little bit of a bug in the PSTN that they're working on. But yes, the classifiers are looking at they take into account if the client can see it. Yep. And it gets logged into that QoE report, right? So I don't know if you guys are all aware at the end, QoE data is submitted when the call is hung up, right? So you hang up the call and it submits a packet. That's what CQD lives off of, right? Is what's in that packet. So whatever data is in that packet, and there's a lot of data, you can actually go into the Teams admin center, click on a call, find the call you want, go to the debug section, and scroll down, right? The icon gets about that big, and it just gives you kind of a glimpse of what's in there. So, all right.
Yeah.
Next.
And Jeff said that is a challenge, by the way, because you have to scroll all the way down, right?
It is. Yeah, it's a challenge, right? And so that's what's kind of one of those things, and that's what we're trying to do with these new classifiers. This is our first step to trying to make it so you don't have to have a PhD in data statistics in order to understand this. Right, yeah. We're trying to use my goal, my long-term dream is to have the ML classifiers feed Copilot, and then you can just Copilot can start feeding you, hey, here's what happened during this meeting.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yep.
And then you can say, can you give me more details on that? And it'll say, sure. Right. I'd love to see that someday. But
that would be great. No, I would agree, and I think people and we got some feedback that everybody appreciates the fact that you're trying to translate what's in the CQD to what actually it really means on the outside. So continue to do that. You're on the right track with that. So thank you for doing that. We did have a question from Alsmar. Are you planning to add any network insights to the end-to-end path from client to the MS Media server? Specifically, really that inside to outside kind of piece, right? How much more detail can we get into those types of data in reports?
That would be a great one for the feedback, because I think I have a different understanding of what network insights mean, because we're already giving honestly, have you guys seen the meeting health report? It scrolls 4 pages to the right. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I still haven't even put everything that's available in there, right? It's kind of like I have to run this delicate balance between not enough and too much. Some of you guys are hardcore and just give it. And other guys just, no, I just want the classifiers, right? Yeah. So I have to kind of balance it out, right? But if you have ideas, especially if you have an idea on a specific report that you'd like to see some type of data that's not there, that is absolutely perfect option to use for feedback, right? But try to give some specific examples, because network insights is a subjective word, right? It means something different than it might mean to you. So,
absolutely. Looks like Mark had a good question. Unclassified traffic. Right? So he saw the reporting states 60 seconds to classify that information. Right? Is there any change in that? He says that we have enough unclassified data that would mark issues as being read, if that's the case. So, wondering if there's going to be a change in that.
So the 60 seconds I was talking about is actually referring to the new dominant participant dimension, right? We need 60 seconds of audio, or you need to turn on VBSS, a screen sharing. One of those two events will get you into the dominant, right? We do have a minimum packet requirement for classified data. It's like 500 packets. And here's a great example. One of the reasons why you see so much unclassified data is when people are on mute the entire call. Why would we need to scan their outbound stream if they're not speaking? We don't. And that is the nature of unclassified. We ignore it because we don't need to look at it, right? We will look at the inbound stream, right? But we will ignore it. So
yeah, which makes perfect sense.
You see it a lot with phones. Like a lot of people, because they join meetings and they're doing something else, and so they're muted the entire call, right? Now the reason why we put a packet threshold in there is because what if somebody comes off mute and just introduces themselves and then goes back on mute?
And that's it, yeah.
Do we really want to analyze that? Was it really important? So we put a threshold, and I think it's 500 packets. Right?
Yep. So, and Mark was saying that he had the minimum 500 packets, so that makes perfect sense. So I think that as far as the chat, I think we got most of those, but does anybody have any questions? If you want to raise your hand, we'll bring people off mute and you can actually ask Matt your question.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking through here too. Oh, Omar asked me about Thousand Eyes and Martalo. I don't know if you want me to give my thoughts on that one.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if this is the venue for that. But.
So here's my politically speak correct. Microsoft does not officially support their solutions. I've had to work on a number of cases with them where they've sent us screenshots of a Thousand Eyes report and opened up cases with just the screenshot. We can't accept that, right? And in reality, guys, you can't expect to monitor a cloud service from the outside. You have to use something like the Teams Admin Center or CQD. You have to back up your Thousand Eyes or Martelo report with something that's Microsoft owned, right? If Thousand Eyes is reporting a problem, you need to go into CQD, the QER, the Admin Center, and see if you can find corroborating information, right? Here's the big reason. One of the solutions that Thousand Eyes uses leverages ICMP. We drop ICMP packets on the Microsoft network. So you can't monitor it, right? So you're getting a ton of false positives or false negatives, really. You're seeing packet loss, or you might see us jump from one customer, they were jumping from California to Sweden and back to California. And when they were sending me screenshots, it kept saying ICMP in the bottom. I'm like, you guys, this is, we drop ICMP packets, right? They do have another solution where you can do HTTPS monitoring, which can get you a little bit, it'll get you right up to the Anycast IPs, the relays, but you're still not going to go much farther than that. So I always recommend that if Thousand Eyes or Martello is reporting a problem, don't dismiss it, but just try to see if CQD, the QER, call a few people around, ask them if they're experiencing a problem, right? Because remember, that's what I always want you guys to do. Don't just chase the data. Try to back the data up with either a human experience or something out of like CQD or the admin center. If you can do that, then you've got a much stronger case with Microsoft to get support on it.
Yep. Perfect. Brad did throw one. I did apologize for that, Brad. But and if you want to take a look at the chat, he actually throws a screenshot. So he's asking about specifically why do we have additional streams now? Understand there's an inbound and outbound, but then what is this main video one, and what are some of these other ones that are in there, and Brad, what's happening behind the scenes?
That's a great question, bud. I agonized over this one for way too long because it goes back to that. Do I show you all the data or do I not show you all the data? Right. We track every individual video stream. So if you have multiple video streams in the call, you're going to have multiple video feeds, right? We can do 9, right? And then of course, if you switch to big mode, it switches, right? Or the large meeting mode or the
large gallery.
So, but when you're just normal, you're just showing 9 at a time, right? And so you'll have up to 9 video feeds. Now, here's the problem. I have no way to know which one is which, right? I don't know which person was on which video feed for which user because it changes as people are speaking, right? It's moving around, but every video feed, as far as the client's concerned, stays the same. Like George will always stay on video feed 1. Matt will always stay on video feed 2. Mary, we always stay on video feed 4. But you might see them differently. They might move around on your screen, come on and off the screen depending on their talking and stuff. But I show that because I just didn't want to hide it. Right. I wanted to be able to show you all the data. Now I have actually been working because of the way the new classifiers work. I'm kind of working with the team to try to determine, is the new classifier looking at all the other streams, or is it just looking at one video stream? If it's just looking at one, I'm probably going to look at hiding the others, right? And putting a little note in there to you can click this to unhide them, because it does make the meeting health report exceptionally long. Right, especially if you've got like a 50-person meeting with video, man, it just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls, right? And so what I'll typically recommend is when you're doing something like that, click the media thing at the top, filter it by like audio or filter it by stream direction or both, right? That'll help shrink it down quite a bit for you.
Cool.
But I'm still thinking about that, man. I want to hide it because I'm right on with you, man. It just makes those things really, really big. Jeff did also ask here, we've still got 9 minutes left. So
yeah.
Jeff also asked, is there any way of making the QER natively into CQD? That's an interesting, I'm not really sure. I think their intention is to get away from like the web interface, right? If you guys notice, not really much has been happening development-wise for that for a number of years. And I think they're just dumping all their efforts into Power BI. What they are going to be working on is like making it native to Power BI, right? Most organizations will get you I think like have 1 million Power BI licenses, right? So pretty much everybody that is a Microsoft 365 subscriber can use Power BI, right? So that was their reasoning behind it. If we can just make it native to Power BI and make it faster, I think that will really solve a lot of the challenges. Plus, if it's native to Power BI, my hope is that it'll give us some of the more advanced Power BI functions that I know a lot of you PBI gurus out there love, like calculated columns, custom measures, averages, means, mins, stuff like that. But I'm just guessing at this point because I really don't know what it's gonna unlock. But I'm hoping. I have a lot of hope for this. So.
And we had another question that was in there, and this is going to be an interesting one. What does a perfect call quality ticket look like? I don't know if that's actual thing, perfect, but
that's a tough one. I don't know if one exists, but let's just focus on a telemetry point of view, right? Because from a user point of view, that word doesn't exist, right? I've had to troubleshoot an hour-long call where there was a problem for 5 seconds, and they wanted to know what happened. Okay. What does a perfect call look like, though, from telemetry point of view? Well, all your network packet loss and latency is all going to be green. That's going to be number one. All the classifiers are going to be blank. You're not going to see any roaming failures. Right? Roaming is a big one. So all you guys out there that are using Zscaler, Netscope, or any of those new always-on proxy solutions, they're great solutions. They work really, really well, but they have a hard requirement that that service needs to stay running for you to remain connected to the internet. And if that service goes offline or crashes, I have a couple of customers where it's just randomly crashing, it'll freeze the call. And what we do is we get that as a roaming event. A roaming event, guys, is a momentary loss of connectivity, right? Like you're on a cell phone and you go between towers and you drop to 0 bars. Call doesn't hang up, but you can't hear anything and they can't hear you. And then a mile later, all of a sudden they come back, right? Call never hung up, but you clearly had a problem, right? So always look at roamings, right? Roaming's a really big one. I also look at the CPU and the RAM metrics. I want to make sure those are low. Everything that I'm telling you right now, I'm going to start adding colors into the meeting health to kind of more mimic what's going on with the admin center, right? Because we are now looking at more things other than just packet loss latency in general. I want to try to highlight other things that are warnings. You know, roaming is one of them. I want to highlight roaming. High CPU usage is one of them. High RAM usage is another. Now, Teams will use a lot of RAM, especially that WebRTC thing. It will use it. Don't be afraid of that, okay? If we see available RAM, we're going to grab it, but it's not a bully. It's going to let go of that RAM should another application come along and request it, right? So you don't have to worry about it. What I get concerned about is if it's consistently seeing like 90% RAM usage while you're in a call, or if the Teams client is consuming more than like 40% of the CPU. On average, it should be like sub 15%. If it starts climbing way up and it stays up, then you know you've got something going on with the machine, right? But the classifier should catch that, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's like right now, a perfect call is no classifiers are found, right? But that's where we need your feedback too, right? And that's where I kind of encourage people. Believe it or not, most companies, the survey, that feedback survey comes out at 10% is the default setting, right? So 1 in every 10 calls, you should get a survey. Sometimes it feels like more, but it's legit 10%. The new classifiers listen to that, right? So if you've got people on there that had a bad call but didn't submit, were prompted and didn't submit, you know, then they didn't have a bad call. Or they just, you know, and so it's really important, though, that they do that because, like I said, it will help your classifiers mark that call as poor, right?
Yeah, agreed.
All right, what else we got here? We got 4 minutes, unless you guys need some time back.
So there was one, and I think there was a conversation here, especially from a PSTN. So James Tierney was asking, he deals a lot with Teams direct routing from a PSTN side of things. And, you know, it doesn't really give them that information. And, you know, we pointed them to the new QER or the download the latest that actually had some more of those capabilities. But then Jeff Jacobs came back in and said, really, you know, you can connect that, right? But it's, you know, the reports are not necessarily there to be able to help with what you're trying to do. Is there more indication of what, or any idea of what we're going to be able to do with that from a PSTN or direct routing side of things?
So there is PSTN data in the QER already, some limited stuff to try to help you with your health analysis, right? And your reliability. So it's really focused on health and reliability. Is it making calls? Are calls getting completed? And then how are the quality of those calls? Because we can measure and we get metrics on everything right up to the mediation, right up to where it goes to the PSTN. Once it is the PSTN network, we don't have any more data from that point of view. And if you are dealing with PSTN issues in calls, then what I'm going to recommend you do, is open up support ticket immediately. Not because of us, but because of the carriers. A lot of times carriers only keep data around for 48 to 72 hours, right? So If you are having PSTN issues, get them opened immediately. If you're dealing with direct routing issues, contact your SBC first before calling Microsoft. If you call Microsoft and you ask for support, the first words out of their mouth are going to be, "Did you contact the SBC provider?" Right? We can't help you with those, but we need to be working with the SBC partner at the same time. Right? It's actually in our supportability guides. But inside the QER download, there actually is a hidden gem in there called, I think it's called MTOE, Microsoft Teams Optimized Experiences. There is a PSTN report in there that may help give you a little more insights. I have not updated it yet to the new classifiers. I'm glad I didn't, because there's a bug in the PSTN classifier, so I'm glad I didn't do it yet. But check that out. That's even actually a service that there's a PDF in there. You can even actually reach out to your CSAM or your CSA, and there's a service that they can offer to help you with your optimized environment to get your PSTN running smooth. So
perfect.
I hope that helps a little bit, right? It's a tough question to answer.
That is a very tough question to answer as well.
Yeah, lots of questions in here. So Tim Balk asked, are there any expected changes for the VDI? Yeah, that's VDI 2.0. It moves away from WebRTC to SlimCore. So get on that, because it makes a huge difference. It really does. It also speeds up our deployment time, because we're no longer relying on Citrix or VMware to go through their due diligence. We can push updates faster by doing it, because we basically brought the media components in house.
Yep.
So
the one right above Tim, I don't know if you addressed the CPU and RAM classifiers.
Which I didn't see that one.
Yeah, but he's asking, what do they measure, the peak consumption or the average?
Both.
For CPU and RAM.
Everything. Yeah,
Everything.
I truly actually don't know everything that the classifiers are monitoring. They are monitoring a lot, right? But I absolutely can tell you they are looking at both averages and maxes, right? Because they're probability engines, right? So they look at a ton of data on these. I think there's also a little bit more data in that Intelligent CQD online article towards the bottom that talks about the compute and what makes them up. So
perfect. And then Brad just threw this one in about the auto attendant and call queue reports. Now, I mean, all of this information is really coming from quality or CQD, right? And you're able to pull more and specifically address the QER part of it.
So the QER leverages the call connector, right?
Yep.
The auto attendant report was written by a product group engineer who is very versed in the API that CQD uses, the REST API. It's not publicly documented, it's not supported, but he is basically pulling data by using REST queries and then ingesting them into Power BI. That's why when you fire up the auto attendant call queue report, it takes a second, because it goes out there and pulls the data down. And then you manipulate the data locally, whereas the QER is direct query, the data stays in the cloud, right? And we're limited by what the dimensions and measures are available to us, whereas using the auto attendant call queue report, you get a lot, because he's downloading it, he can use the full power of Power BI to do some really cool things.
Yeah.
But it does use the same data source. Just the way that it applies it is differently. It's the same data source. And so is Call Analytics. Right, by the way, in the Teams Admin Center, the only one that's different is the real-time analytics. That's a different data source.
So Brad raised your hand. Brad, do you have any more that you want to add to that, or ask? Come off mute if you want to.
No, sorry, that was a mistake. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you for the question, by the way. All right, well, I think that hit everything, Matt.
Yeah, I don't see any more in here.
I don't either, so way to go.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, great job.
Yes, thank you, Matt.
So,
great presentation. So
there will be an update coming soon, probably the first of the year. So I'm due for an update, because we finally got CVI data. It's finally fixed. It's fixed. So I just have to add it into the reports, so you guys can look at your CVI level data. I know that's been asked for a while.
And hopefully they'll fix the PSTN bug too.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Jonathan and I were talking about we may have to have you back. Great job. Really appreciate it. And thank you again, Matt, for joining us and presenting.
Yeah,
no problem,
and all
guys.
the readers as well. Thank you, Matt. Great, amazing. Thank you for all joining. Mary Beth, always.